Nile's had a house in Westport for 20 years, and during that time he's collected lots of awards. But tonight we want to add the Neighborhood Award. Nile, come on up and get the Westport Library Award.
Correction, Nile has had a house in Westport for about 35 years. I got my house in 1979. Someone asked me earlier, they said, when did you move here? I says, oh, when a house costs $269,000 and I have 8 feet of water at mean low tide. So that's when I moved here. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I love it. She said, "Stay up and talk a little. You don't know what you just asked." Yeah, so I moved to Westport, as I said, in around 1978, 79, I bought my house. And it was interesting, when the gentleman was speaking at the beginning, he said, we're known for being a party town. Well, absolutely, you sure were, because right across the street, there was some joint called Backstage, and that was the main attraction. Well, sort of. There was no state tax either. Yeah. Just briefly, if you haven't read the book, here's how it actually went down. After our first hit record, we realized that the people that we were working with were rather nefarious individuals, and we didn't want to continue our relationship with these guys. They were pretty tough guys. So we stood our ground and said, well, we don't want to accept any money, even though we had a #1 record. So we didn't want to acknowledge the contract. And as I said, these were tough guys. So, but we kept working because we were just those kind of people. And the second year, we wound up meeting Sister Sledge and writing We Are Family. So what wound up happening was our first big royalty check was somewhere around $8 million. So we went from like living on the subway and and busking and with the hat and all, to getting $8 million and having to split that. And I was like, now what do we do? And my business manager said, well, the last thing you want to do is pay New York State tax on $8 million. Because as young black men, they're going to think you're drug dealers or something, and they're going to be looking for that money every year. So they said, you need to move to Wilmington, Delaware. I said, I'd rather pay double the tax than move to Wilmington, Delaware. But I had friends who lived in Westport, and I used to come up and visit them all the time. And when I would come here, we'd go to these clubs like Backstage and the other joint, I forget, on the Post Road, I forgot it was they said it was the first gay club on the Eastern Seaboard. And it was like all these places we'd go hang out, and they were really, really fun. And I was like, man, the suburbs are amazing. And I don't have to pay state tax. This is incredible. So the first thing I did when I got my half of the $8 million is I bought a speedboat. So I'm living in Manhattan with a speedboat. Most people in those days didn't have cars in New York City, but I had a cigarette ocean racer. And so I used to dock it on the east side, And one day I got this really light bulb moment, and you know, so I was looking for this house, not in Wilmington, Delaware, but somewhere where I didn't have to pay state tax. And I said, well, boy, if I can get a house on the water and not have to pay state tax, it'd be fantastic. And I came to Westport and I looked around, and this is the truth. The very first house I looked at, I bought. Because I didn't really care about the house. I just looked outside and the guy had a sailboat. And I was like, and so my financial people were trying to talk to the guy and get the price down, and I was just looking out the back window going, what's the depth of the keel on that boat? And he's like, well, blah, 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 blah. I says, I'll take the house. Anyway, so this was a long time ago, and I loved it here. When I moved here, Donna Summer lived here, Ashford and Simpson lived here. I mean, this was such an artistic town, and I felt at home right away, especially because my next door neighbors, they came and knocked on my door the first day. And by now, not only did I have the speedboat, but I also had a Maserati Bora parked in the driveway, along with a couple of Porsches. And my neighbor came over. Actually, the kids came over and said, you know, my dad was saying really bad stuff about you. And I said, really? Well, why? They said, well, because you moved into the neighborhood and your cars and boats are really loud. But he always wanted to drive a Maserati, so I said, well, tell your dad to come over and he can drive mine. And next thing you know, her dad and I became friends and we were buddies, and we're still friends to this very day. There's a guy named Joe DeScala, and I used to walk around the neighborhood and see DeScala Realty, DeScala this, DeScala. I said, well, I guess that's how it works up here. Everybody knows everyone, and we drive each other. Actually, Joe borrowed my car, one of my cars, my Porsches, and actually wrecked it one day. But that's another story. Anyway, you know, I got here, and I felt welcome right from the very first day when Joe borrowed my Maserati. But the people in the town, I remember the first time I met, you know, the Newman family. I mean, just everybody, and this was, oh my God, it was Phil Donahue. I mean, it was just so cool. Everybody was really, really cool, and you know, and I remember Donna Summer, and what was who did Instant Replay? Dan Hartman. Dan Hartman had a house here, so it was just the most artistic, cool town, and I felt loved. And you know, it's funny, all the kids in the neighborhood were actually my friends first, because, you know, not only do they like, the dads like the sports cars and stuff like that, but the kids would come over because I was making Madonna's record at the time. So the kids would come and they'd stare and they'd look in the window, and all the girls would dress up like Madonna and tie their hair in bows and stuff. And I guess my house was sort of known as the party house. And then, something interesting happened. A lot of years went by, and my life got pretty out of control, because I won't say that it's the rock and roll business that does it to you, but I was sort of, the pump was primed just from my childhood, my parents, and I was the kind of kid that was attracted to that wild lifestyle. Anyway, at some point in time, I decided I really can't live like this, because I love playing music more than I love partying and all that sort of thing. So I went to a hospital called Silver Hill in New Canaan, and I decided to change my life, and I got sober almost, it'll be 20 years, Madonna's next birthday. So in a way, the 20-year story is right, because truthfully, I used to just come up here to party and take the boat and stuff like that. But when I came to Silver Hill almost 20 years ago, my shrink at the time said, Nile, don't you own a house up in Connecticut? And I said, yeah. He says, well, why don't you pack a bag and take it up to the house after you leave Silver Hill? And I said, well, why would I do that? He says, well, because, you know, people who try and recover from alcoholism and drug abuse don't really have a good track record, and I don't think you're going to do that well, at least not the first time around. He was wrong, actually. I did great. But after I left Silver Hill, I honestly never had a drink or a drug ever again, but I did stay in the house for 20 years. And it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, because I slowly but surely started to move all my junk from New York, and next thing I know, my house became my recording studio, and I started making records here in Westport. So almost every record that I do, some portion of it happens at my house here. And I gotta tell you guys, I love it here. I am so impressed with what the library does. I had my book signing here a couple of years ago when we first put out the book, and I was like, wow, this is a pretty cool library. It was, you know, I've seen it. There used to be, where the movie theater was across the street, there used to be like some place that used to have dances or parties, like the kids, the teens would go up on the second floor and party and hang out there, and I'd always go and check out and say, are they listening to my records? Actually, Madonna was the one who would do that. Hey, now let's go see if they're listening to my records. So this part of town I've always known about, but I never really hung out here until I came and I did the book signing, and you guys were so amazing. It was such a great event, and one of the coolest things ever. You know, you think about, my life has been pretty wonderful. I worked for Frank Sinatra, I've done all this cool stuff, but one of the coolest things of my whole life was we ran out of books. And the library went to Barnes & Noble and bought them at retail price. They went and bought them at retail price and brought them back to the library, and I signed the books, and it was a really cool event. And thank you so much for making me feel loved and welcome. And yeah, and let's build this new library. That's pretty awesome. And I'm in. I'll help you do it.